Like, to me, it's such a big difference. I've got a really cheap and easy upgrade that I'm going to show you how to do today that you can install into your acoustic guitar to massively improve its electrified tone. Now, I've installed hundreds of these over the years into my customers' guitars, and it always makes a really big difference. So these tone sticks are a really thin piece of veneer that's sandwiched between your guitar saddle and your undersaddle pickup. One of the main problems I find with acoustic guitar pickups is the fact that they have really uneven string balance, and also they can lack a lot of fullness, especially the older style piezo systems. Now, one of the problems with that, apart from the saddle not being actually filed down properly or ground down properly with a perfectly flat bass, is that the pickup element itself has minor discrepancies in how it's been made. So you're going to have high and low spots, and if you don't have perfect contact with the saddle and the pickup, you're going to get a lot of those problems like string imbalance and a lack of fullness. So what that little tone stick does is it takes up those little gaps and sort of helps the pickup and the saddle mate together a lot more perfectly to iron out a lot of those problems. Okay, so what we're going to need today to make these is, obviously, first you're going to need some veneer. That's a little bit of silver beech that I've got. You're going to need a couple of rulers, or just a ruler. I like using two because I'm weird like that. Some tape, and make sure it's paper tape too. You don't, the stuff that you can rip. You don't want to use any sort of plastic tape. That does not work very well at all. Some scissors is handy. Probably even more so handy, one of these, I call them a stand knife or a tractable knife or whatever you call it, wherever you are. Pencil, that's like one of those little lead feeder style pencils. Something hard to cut on. I like using a piece of MDF, but you do want something that's kind of hard and really, really flat. So MDF's really, really good for that. But that's everything you're going to need to be able to make one of these little tone sticks. Right, so let's make one of these. So first we're going to get our veneer. I've got this bit of silver beech here, and then you need to run tape along one side. So I'm going to get some of the tape, rip it, line it up at that edge if you can, and tape it along. I'm going to snip the excess off just with my scissors, and then just run your fingers along it. Make sure it's making really good contact all the way along. Okay, so next you want to take your pencil, and I normally measure about 2.5 mil down. So you're going to be 1, 2.5. It's a roundabout thing. When you've done a whole bunch of them, you don't even really need to measure it anymore. You can just sort of iometer it. Now I'm going to get my bigger ruler. Now this is the crucial part. Make sure, by the way, you're doing it with the grain. So the tape is going with the grain. All my grain lines are going this way, and I'm going to be wanting to cut with the grain as well. I don't want to be cutting against the grain. So you're going to line your ruler up with those dots. Now the key to this is having something hard to cut on. Having a sharp blade is good. And now you don't want to be on an angle like this. You want to be on a sort of a flatter angle, slightly tilted in towards the ruler. Okay, and almost no pressure. So push down on that ruler, and then just, it's a very relaxing cut all the way through. Like you're barely pushing. And you just keep going. And make sure you have it at a nice shallow angle, and then eventually it just cuts. Okay, so once you've got the strings off, pop out your saddle, and you'll see the pickups down in there. Now you get your stick, you want to sort of measure it, and then mark it. See, I've already marked this one here. Then cut it, and then just slide it in. Now what we need to do is we have to take off the exact same thickness of this veneer off this saddle here. So what I like to use to do that is this nut and saddle vise. This thing is one of my favorite tools, and all you have to do is pop saddle in there, and then screw these little screws up, and you can get the exact amount off the bottom as you want. Now one thing you can do is you can just rule a line across the bottom like with a Sharpie, and then just sand it by hand on something nice and flat until you get it perfect. Yep, so I've got my piece of glass here. I've got some sandpaper stuck to it, so I use adhesive back sandpaper. I've got the saddle in the vise now, and I've set it up to around about 1 mil. Cool, and as you can see, once the wheels are sort of rolling, that's how I know I'm at the right height. Just switch around, find a grit sandpaper. Cool, and that feels done. Then I just loosen off my clamps and pop it out, and the saddle is almost ready to go on. Cool, and the next step is just to check its level. So I just put it against a straight edge and make sure that bottom is perfectly flat, which it is. Right, so today what are we using? Firstly, I've got one of these pickups that I got off AliExpress. It cost me about $3.50. I think that was including shipping as well. I'll put a link down in the description so you can grab one if you want to. I bought it because they are an old school style piezo pickup, not a really great sounding pickup, and I thought it would be the easiest to show the difference between the stock sound and when you put one of these tone sticks in, because if it can really improve this sort of pickup, imagine what it can do to like a Fishman or something like that. So we're just going to be recording this raw directly into my interface, but I will do a more dressed up, I suppose, performance later on, so you can kind of hear what the potential of this pickup is. This first test, I'm going to show you the sound without a tone stick and then with a tone stick installed. This is really the important test to show you the difference of what one of these can do. This is the first test. This is just the pickup with no tone sticks. Let's have a listen. Actually sounds pretty decent. So you can hear that there's imbalance there between the strings. That is due to the inconsistencies with this particular pickup. Okay, so we're going to put that tone stick in there and just see what differences it makes. Like, to me, it's such a big difference. Evenness across the pickup itself. The bass response is a lot better, and the sharpness in that top end it's just not as piezo-y, if that's even, is it piezo or piezo? I don't know if anyone really knows, but it definitely doesn't have as much of that quality about it. String balance too is so much better. Yeah, so that was actually pretty interesting. Not using those tone sticks, you can clearly hear the string balance is off. If you're using those headphones, you can definitely hear the fullness of the pickup when using the tone stick. That's just because that saddle and that pickup are mated together so much more perfectly, because that piece of wood is taking up those voids or those tiny little gaps between the bottom of the saddle and the top of that undersaddle transducer. Okay, so it's time for the tone stick shootout. I am really interested to see whether the different woods are going to actually make a difference. I've always just used what I've got on hand when I make these in the workshop. I never really thought that using a different type of wood could actually make a tonal difference, but we're about to find out anyway, so this is going to be a great test. So here's the woods that we're going to be using today. Right, so you can use loads of different woods to make these tone sticks. I've got a bunch of different veneers here. I use veneers for our pedals, so the pedals that I make, I use veneers for the tops, and I also veneer the circuit boards and all sorts of other things. For today, what we're going to be using is some maple. We're going to be using some American walnut and this little sad piece of American cherry here. I'll cut a piece off that. Check this out, guys. Even more exciting than that, I forgot I even had this in here. I've got some 30,000-year-old swamp coldie veneers. So we're going to be using a piece of this today as well. I'm pretty excited to see what that sounds like. Hey guys, I'm just editing this video up now and I realized I forgot to add a clip in after that wood test. So if you thought there was differences between those different types of woods, please let me know down in the comments. I definitely could tell there was a slight difference. I don't think it was anything major, but it'd be great to hear your thoughts on that. Anyway, let's carry on with this next test. So this next test is just something I thought I'd chuck in there. Does the tone stick affect the guitar acoustically? So I've just got a mic in the room and I'm going to do it with the tone stick and without the tone stick and see what it sounds like. Here is the guitar acoustically with no tone stick in it. Okay, so acoustically for me, I didn't really hear much of a difference. It'd be interesting to see what you guys think out there from the test, but I think with the tone stick underneath, to me it sounded pretty much the same as without it. I didn't really hear any difference there. So now it's time to get this pickup sounding as good as I possibly can. And I'm just going to do a little bit of EQing, a little bit of compression, add a bit of ambience and stuff like that, just to get the best I can out of it. Now, bear in mind, it is a $3.50 pickup with a bit of veneer over top. I'm not expecting a heck of a lot from this thing. But anyway, here we go. Let's see what it sounds like. So why can't you just EQ this pickup to make it sound as good as what it sounds with one of those tone sticks in there? And that's, but apart from the bad string balance, if you haven't got the sonic information there to start with, you can't really introduce it artificially. So you can only boost and cut what is already being produced. And if that sound is not already there, it's really hard to just recreate it out of nothing. So that's why I prefer to get a nice full-bodied sound to start with, and then you can just cut and sculpt it from there. It's kind of like a block of clay, and you just sort of sculpting away, taking away pieces to reveal the sound that you want in a real ultra corny way. That's kind of what it's like when you're sort of trying to get the EQ sound that you're after. So as you can see, it's a pretty effective way to upgrade your guitar's electrified tone, and it'll work with any undersaddle transducer. So at the end of the day, it doesn't cost pretty much anything for one of those pieces of veneer. You could probably get some for free if you just went to a place that does a lot of veneer work. There'll be offcuts all over the show. You only need a tiny slither. So it's worth trying to see if it's going to make an improvement for you, because I know for a fact that it's made a massive improvement for me and my customers over the last 20 or so years. So make sure you give that a try. Have a great week, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to this video if you haven't already, and we'll catch you next time.